Okay, it has been debated heavily this year, and despite warnings of a huge fallout, it is happening. Starting tomorrow, January 1st, Seattle's minimum wage will rise to $20.76 an hour. Now, technically, it's only increasing by just under $1, but the big change is that businesses with fewer than 500 employees will no longer be able to get a credit for the tips employees earn or for providing medical benefits. That credit was worth $2.76 per hour. This means many restaurants will have to pay $3 more per hour per employee. Seattle's new rate will be $4 higher than Washington State's new minimum wage for the year, which is $16.66. And we're not the only area increasing the minimum wage. Here's CBS News' Carissa Lawson.
Millions of workers across 21 states will get a pay raise for the new year due to minimum wage salary increases. Experts at the nonprofit Economic Policy Institute say almost a third of working Americans live in a state where the minimum wage is $15 or more. Still, the federal minimum wage hasn't budged from $7.25 in around 15 years.
This is a topic I especially wanted to discuss because a lot of folks have made claims about what the impact will be. But you, Mike, I really want your perspective because you have so many different, you're a journalist and you're a business owner. You have so many ways that you, could approach this. So
I'm actually going to be paying.
Yeah. So tell us, right. What's your reaction to this? Where have you stood on it?
So in our business, we've always paid more than minimum wage. And so the debate for me has been interesting because I think people are reacting, sometimes overreacting to something that has nothing to do with the level of tip and has a lot to do with the method of tipping. I think so tipping has been a part of in my industry is bar industry, right? Bar and pub. So I don't know about other things. I can't speak to those, but I can speak to one thing. And the tipping has been a part of it since I've been in it for 20 some odd years. The backlash didn't really start and it wasn't really wage related. The backlash started with electronic tipping. When we went to the kiosks, that when you go up to a coffee shop and you order a cup of coffee and they spin the tablet toward you and you pay and then potentially you tip while there's people in line behind you, while that person is waiting for you to finish your transaction, and frequently you're tipping prior to any service. Other than somebody like acknowledging your presence and taking your order. The problem with that front-end tipping is people immediately two things happened. One, people got unhappy about tipping before they actually even had a sip of their coffee or whatever it was that they ordered, or they were simply just handed a muffin out of a pastry cooler or pastry holder. And then the second thing is that the default on electronic tipping was frequently set fairly high. I walk into places, and I'm a person who's a big believer in tipping, and if it defaults at 25%,
and goes up to 30%.
I'm unhappy about
yes.
that. I understand wanting your people to make good money. I get it because I want mine to as well. But defaulting like that immediately gets people it's funny. Yesterday we were talking about what you do as, say, a cyclist out there and how that can affect the way people perceive the entire group of cycling. This is the tip thing. People get unhappy. They go to one place. Someone is defaulting their electronic tipping to 25%, and they get unhappy about tipping. They're not unhappy about this place. They get unhappy about the whole thing. And if you look at the comments on all of the news stories that have been written regarding tomorrow's change to $20.67 an hour, this is something that people are reacting to. And I didn't hear this until the electronic tipping started about 5 years ago during the pandemic. I think that people should look at, if I had to provide tipping advice, and you may think I've got a dog in this fight, and I do, but here's what I would say. I think there's many environments where you ought not tip. And I think there's many environments where you probably ought to, and I would base it on service.
Okay, let me back up just a minute, because in this case, are you making the point that because of this increase in minimum wage for a lot of these workers, because the businesses aren't getting tip credit, a lot of folks are saying, well, I'm not tipping anymore. If they're making $20 an hour, I'm not tipping. Is that what you're reacting to?
Entirely. And that's what has been, if you look at the text messages we get, if you look at the comment threads on the news stories, it's all about, once they got to $20, I'm not tipping anymore. Now, I realize that these are the people who are more vocal about it. Like the vast bulk of people, I'm sure, are probably going to continue doing what they're doing. But when you see that, I feel like there is a disconnect between what if you walk into a place and you buy a discrete product and you walk out with that product, you didn't sit down. Like, I can understand that. I can understand not wanting to tip. They handed you something, you walked out. That's fine. Do you tip at the grocery store? No.
So is this minimum wage increase going to backfire, and will workers find themselves making less? Because I just got a $3 per hour increase for the new year, but then some folks are saying, you know what, I'm not tipping anymore. Could they actually see less in their paycheck?
I mean, it's conceivable. I don't know. I mean, every time I think I can predict something, I realize that I can't. And so I don't know. But I would say also, if you go out for fine dining, and you decide to not tip at fine dining, they're already making more than that an hour. So what you've done now is just roll back their wage. You haven't helped them. Remember, $20.67 an hour is $43,000 a year. We were talking last week on KIRO. Your average expenses, if you're a single person in Seattle, you have a 1-bedroom apartment, you're with let's just say you're making a low car payment, but utilities, rent, food, things like that, you're already absorbing about 79% of that on the natural before you've done anything, before you had one emergency, before you've done anything at all. So don't assume that $20 an hour is somehow people getting wealthy on that. They are not. And frequently in a city like Seattle, they're at the poverty line.
Right. But here's the thing. So I agree with you. If that's $43,000 a year, we know you can't make it on that at $20.76 an hour.
Right.
So, all right, people keep tipping, but then restaurants or places have to raise, they're saying they're going to have to raise prices, or some places will close. What do you foresee some restaurants or business having to close, like they're claiming, like we won't be able to make it with these margins?
So it depends on where you are. I mean, we are exceptionally, it's nice to think of yourself as a smart business person, but it's also okay to think of yourself as a lucky one. And I put myself in the lucky category. The place that we have is 2 blocks from Climate Pledge.
Right.
That helps. I mean, so and Climate Pledge, you think
location.
But you think it's expensive going out to eat in Seattle. Go eat at Climate Pledge or buy a $16 tall boy of Rainier, right? That is way more expensive. So I think in some cases it's probably not going to have a massive effect. It might on the tipping end of things. I think in other places, particularly if you are a restaurant that is at the border of Seattle and X town, and they are paying less, down the street, literally down the street from you, and can subsequently charge less for food, those are the places that are going to be much more inclined to really feel the pinch.
All right. Well, we're happy that folks are getting a raise, and let's see what the impact will be.
I'm happy folks are getting a raise.
Yeah, let us know what you think. 888-973-5476.